Welcome back to More Than a Statistic. Now let me introduce our next speaker, Dr. James Wilkerson, aka the Title IX guy. Dr. Wilkerson is a New Albany, Indiana native that serves as the Director of Equity and Diversity and the Deputy Title IX Coordinator at Indiana University Southeast. He holds his master's degree in communication from Bellarmine University and both his bachelor's and Juris Doctorate from the University of Louisville. His book, The Title IX Guy, was released in 2021 and was a gender and law bestseller on Amazon. He was named a member of the 2021 Louisville Business First 40 Under 40 class and was voted Best Local Writer in the Louisville Eccentric Observer Magazine 2021 Reader's Choice Poll. Dr. Wilkerson has recently been named a member of the Southern Indiana Business Magazine's 2022 20 Under 40 class.
Hi, my name is James Wilkerson, otherwise known as the Title IX guy. I'm a Title IX coordinator, writer, and speaker on topics of healthy sexual practices. So let's talk about consent. What exactly is consent and why is it important? Well, consent is the foundation, the building block of any sexual transaction. I go all across the country talking to high school and college kids, and the first question that I always ask is, what's the first thing you need before you have sex? And the answer always is a condom. Well, close, you got the C right, but what you actually need before the condom is consent. Because without consent, well, then that's when you have sexual assault. So let's talk about what consent is. Simply put, consent is permission. If you have the consent to do something, then you have the permission to do it. And this shouldn't be a difficult idea because we deal in consent all the time. For example, think about when you go to your doctor's office. You walk in the door and you are hit with a barrage of different questions from the nurse. That nurse is going to ask you if they can take your weight and your height. They're going to ask you, can they take your blood pressure? They're going to ask that they can look inside your ear with that little ear looky thing. And that's the technical word for it, the ear looky thing. The point is, they are going to ask your permission before they do a single thing to you. And you have to give them consent before they can treat you. Now, there are two different ways that we can give consent. The first is called express consent, and it's called that because we are expressing what a person has the permission to do through our words. So if you were to ask me if you could take my car to go to a restaurant and get food, and I said yes, well then I've just given you the express consent to do so. And it works for written consent as well. So if you sent me a text asking me to use my car and I messaged you back and said yes, well, that's express consent as well. The second type of consent is implied consent. And it's called implied consent because through our actions, we imply what you have the permission to do. Back to the example, if you were to ask me to use my car to go to a restaurant and I didn't say a word, but I just tossed you my keys, well, then I have implied through my actions that you have the permission to take my car. Because why would I throw you the keys if you didn't have permission to take the car in the first place? Another question I like to ask is, which would you rather have in a sexual situation? Would you rather have express consent or implied consent? I ask this of students all across the country and I get a variety of different answers, but for me, I feel like my answer is always express consent. And I want to have express consent because I want to make sure that I know which parameters I need to stay in. Don't want there to be any gray area. Don't want there to be any mistake. And for me, that's the best way moving forward. So I'm an express consent guy all the way. So we have consent now. Well, when do you don't have it anymore? Well, you don't have consent anymore whenever the person who gave it to you takes it away. Consent, thou giveth and thou can taketh away for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Consent's like a green light driving down the street. Some of those streets you're driving and you can hit like several green lights in a row and you're going good, but eventually you're going to get a red light. And when you get that red light, you got to stop. Because if you go past that red light, then guess what? You've just committed a crime. The ticket, however, for a red light is a lot less than the sanctions for sexual assault. How about this? What all does consent cover? If someone is giving you consent for something, what all does it cover? Well, consent can cover only what you have agreed to. Let's say that we're in a business transaction and I own a grocery store and you deal in produce. And we have a contract. And on that contract, I'm gonna buy 1,000 apples from you for $1,000. And we agree and we sign. Well, then you have to give me those 1,000 apples and I got to give you those $1,000. You can't give me 500 apples and 500 oranges. You can't give me 1,000 bananas and I can't give you $500. We have to go with what we agreed with. And if we do anything else, we have broken the contract. Now we got to go and talk to a judge to see what we're going to do about it. Once again, the sanctions for breaking a produce contract are a lot less than breaking a consent contract. Because as I said before, without consent, that's when you have sexual assault. So consent only covers what you have agreed to. Now, let me ask you this question. Can men give consent or can we only get it? Well, if you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, I think we can give consent too, you are absolutely right. Right now, I'm in the state of Indiana, but I live in Kentucky. And if I look at the laws in both of those states, it doesn't really make any difference whether it is a man giving or getting consent. It just says that a person has to give another person permission. And whatever state you're watching this in right now, I'm sure if you looked at the state laws of where you're at, you would see that it says something along the same lines. Absolutely, men can and should give consent just as we ask for it as well. Now, let me ask you this question. What happens whenever alcohol gets brought into the mix? Can you give consent if you've been drinking? This is a question that I ask a lot. And a lot of people will jump really quickly at the answer and say, no, you can't give consent if you've been drinking. But once again, it's important to look at the law in the state where you are at. See, here in Indiana and even in Kentucky, what the law says is that you cannot give consent if you are incapacitated. There's a lot of things that could lead one to be incapacitated. If I left this wonderful studio right now and walked out and I got hit by a car, well, I'm going to be incapacitated. I'll be in the hospital probably with a full body cast on, mouth be all wired shut like Kanye. I'm not giving consent for anything if I'm in that state. Every single one of us are incapacitated at some point in the day because at some point in the day, we all have to go to sleep. So you're incapacitated if you're not conscious due to sleep. And yes, alcohol and drugs can also lead to incapacitation as well. And if you are incapacitation due to either one of those things, guess what? You cannot give consent. Is being drunk and being incapacitated the same thing? Just like any legal question, it depends. Me, I'm about 6'1" and I weigh about 280 pounds. For me, my path to incapacitation might be a little bit longer than yours. My wife, she's about 5'5", little tiny thing. Her path to incapacitation is a lot shorter than mine. So sometimes it depends on the person. It depends on their biological makeup. It depends on their experience with alcohol. The easy answer that I can give you is, hey, if you've been drinking, stay away from sex. That's the easy answer, but it may not be the practical one. And I understand that. It's easy to stand inside this beautiful studio and say that to you. It's a little bit different when you're actually out there in the field. But one thing I caution is that you be careful. Because a lot of times when drinking culture and hookup culture intersect, that's where we have a lot of our problems. Hopefully, our discussion on consent can answer questions for you. Maybe you knew some of the stuff I've already talked about today, and if you did, great. This is just a refresher. Or maybe you were like me whenever I was 17 and I had no clue about any of this stuff, and I've shared a lot of really good knowledge that you didn't previously know. Either way, consent is a building block. Think of the sexual equation as this: sexual contact plus consent equals a pretty fun time. Sexual contact minus consent, that equals a crime. And that's the equation that we're trying to stay away from.